Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kundi Yodan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadi Dham Ki Jai Kamala Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Shri Mani Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shri Mani Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Samveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 14. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mam Evaye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite, Daryesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mam Evaye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite, Dahi Yesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mam Evaye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite,
Daiviyesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mamaye Prapajante, Mayam Etam Tarantite,
Daiviyesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mamaye Prapajante, Mayam Etam Tarantite.
Anyone else?
Daiviyesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mam Evaye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite,
consisting of the three modes of material nature.
Consisting of three modes of material nature.
Mama, Maya.
Maya,
Energy.
energy.
Duratyaya, very difficult to overcome.
Very difficult to overcome.
Mam, unto me.
Unto me.
Eva, certainly.
Certainly.
Yea, those who. Prapadyante, surrender. Mayamitam, this illusory energy. Tarantite, overcome. Te, de. Translation. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has innumerable energies, and all these energies are divine. Although the living entities are part of His energies and are therefore divine, due to contact with material energy, their original superior power is covered. Being thus covered by material energy, one cannot possibly overcome its influence. As previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. The conditioned soul is therefore called Nityavada, or eternally conditioned. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain time in material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy. Because the material energy is ultimately conducted by the Supreme Will, which the living entity cannot overcome, inferior material nature is defined herein as divine nature due to its divine connection and movement by this divine will. Being conducted by the divine will, material nature, although inferior, acts so wonderfully in the construction and destruction of the cosmic manifestation. The Vedas confirm this as follows: Mayam tu prakritam vidyam, mayinam tu maheshwaram. Although Maya illusion is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme magician, the personality of Godhead, who is Maheshwar, the supreme controller. Sri Tashvatara Upanishad 4.10. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by a person who is unbound. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated. Therefore, only Lord Krishna, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. Devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of the illusory energy, can order his insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. He orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul and out of his paternal affection for the living entity, who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. Therefore, surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is the only means to get free from the clutches of the stringent material nature. The words Mam Eva are also significant. Mam means unto Krishna, Vishnu, only, and not Brahma or Shiva. Although Brahma and Shiva are greatly elevated and are almost on the level of Vishnu, it is not possible for such incarnations of Rajaguna, passion, and Tamaguna, ignorance, to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. In other words, Both Brahma and Shiva are also under the influence of Maya. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya. Therefore, he alone can give release to the conditioned soul. The Vedas, Svatasvatara Upanishad 3.8 confirm this in the phrase, Tam eva viditva, or freedom is possible only by understanding Krishna. Even Lord Shiva affirms that liberation can be achieved only by the mercy of Vishnu. Lord Shiva says, Mukti padata sarveshvam Vishnu eva na samsaya. There is no doubt that Vishnu is the deliverer of liberation for everyone. Om ajnanatinanandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshur unmilitam jena tasmai shri gurave namaha mukam karati vachalam pangum langayate ganim yat kripa taraham bande shri gurun nidataranam paramananda madhavam shri chaitanya ishvaram. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So Krishna, he has so many different energies. Parasya Shakti or Vividhaya Shrite, various energies. And these energies are all emanating from him. One of them are the living entities. The living entities are known as Krishna's Tatastha Shakti, that they are sometimes attracted by the lower energy, the material energy, and sometimes they're attracted by their real nature, which is the spiritual energy. And although they're eternal, although they're the same quality as the Supreme Lord, means there's not Chit and Ananda, due to contact with material nature, they become covered over. And in this covered state, they become controlled. The living entity is always controlled. Either he's controlled by Krishna in the liberated state, or he's controlled by Krishna's energy in the conditioned state. Srila Prabhupada refers to the living entity as Nityabadha, eternally conditioned, which means that it can't be traced out. It's been conditioned for so long, there's no record of it. So, Nityabadha. But this verse is kind of, contradictory in a sense. Because in the first part of the verse, Krishna says this energy of mine, this divine energy, and it's divine because its connection with him, the material energy, is controlled by Krishna. Maya yakshena prakriti suyate sutrachanam. This material energy is controlled by me, Krishna says. So divine. And it's consisting of the three modes of material nature, and it's duratya. Duratya means very difficult to overcome, material nature. The living entity is covered by this body, which is made up the 5 gross material elements, Bhumir, Alo, Nalo, Mayu, which means earth, water, fire, and sky. Right? These are the gross material, Panch Mahabhuta it's referred to, the 5 gross material elements. But besides being covered over by the gross material elements, the living entity is also covered over by mind, intelligence, and false ego, the subtle body. So due to this combination, the living entity is tightly controlled by this material covering. And it's not possible for him to get out. Right? Although it may be advertised by some so-called spiritual leaders that you just meditate for 6 months and you can become God. Right? You become free from the material condition. But actually, we learn from Bhagavad Gita that that's not true. It's not possible. Of course, we do see an example of Dhruva Maharaj that he did in 6 months become free from his material condition. But he also had as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he had the assistance of a spiritual master, namely Narada Muni. Right? We all know the story of Dhruva Maharaj, but anyway, I'll tell it again. He was sitting on his father's lap, Uttanapada, Maharaj Uttanapada, And he was enjoying himself in his father's lap, but his stepmother came and chastised him. You can't sit there because only my son can sit on his lap, right? And if you want to sit on his lap, then you have to take birth again in my womb, and then it'll be possible to sit on his lap. So these were very harsh words coming from the boy's stepmother. And being a Kshatriya, he took it very challenging that he'll do something about that. So he went to his mother and he said, you know, I want to have a kingdom not only greater than my father's, but greater than my grandfather's kingdom also. So who was his grandfather?
Brahma.
Everybody knows the story. But his mother was saying, look, I can't do much about it. Your father's more attracted by the stepmother, more attached to her. But if you want to have a kingdom that's greater than your grandfather's even, then you have to approach Lord Vishnu, right? And he thought, okay, well, where do I find him? He said, well, I heard that, you know, sages meditate on him in the forest and they find him there. So he immediately took off for the forest. And along the way, he met his spiritual master, Narada Muni. So Narada Muni asked him, hey, where are you going? He said, I'm going to find Vishnu in the forest. And he said, look, you're just a small boy. You shouldn't worry about these things. Just go and play, and later on you can find Lord Vishnu. He said, no, I have to find Lord Vishnu now. So he saw the boy was very determined. Dhruva had this Kshatriya spirit, you know, Kshatriya spirit. So he said, all right, if you want to find Vishnu, then you chant this mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, taking the mantra, he went to the forest and he began to chant and perform austerities. And his austerities were so stringent that he disturbed the imbalance of airs within the universe by his meditation. And the demigods went to Brahma, and Lord Brahma went to Lord Vishnu and said, you know, find out what this kid wants. He's creating a big problem here. So Lord Vishnu says, no, I'm going, I'll take care of it. So he went down, he came to Dhruva, and as soon as Dhruva had the darshan of the Supreme Lord, all of his desires for a big material kingdom were dissolved. He didn't want anything. He was completely satisfied with the Lord. And he said, although I was looking for, you know, broken glass, pieces of broken glass, something material, I got the valuable diamond of your association. This is the situation in the material world. We are looking for happiness in something that will not bring us happiness. The eternal spirit soul, how will the eternal spirit soul become happy with anything that's temporary? It's not possible. So therefore, because the conditioned soul is in this situation, to get out of the situation on his own is not possible. He requires that mercy of the Lord. So the secret, as mentioned in the purport, is that if you're, you know, Prabhupada explains that if you're bound up by the hands and the legs, you can't unbind yourself. You need assistance. You need help. Right? Someone who's unbound, they can unbind you. They can unbind us. So therefore, we need the mercy of the Lord, and that comes via his representative. You know, Arjuna was very fortunate to directly have the Lord as his guide, his spiritual master. But we are also have that same fortunate opportunity by following the pure devotee of the Lord's pure devotee. And that's possible through following his instruction in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Tadvihi Paripatena, Pariprashnena Sevya, Upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. There, Lord Krishna advises Arjuna, you approach the tattvadarshina, one who has already seen the truth. And, you pay him $25 and get a mantra and you can levitate. He didn't say that. I'm just kidding. What he said is that you hear from him, right? And you render service unto him. Right? So, by this rendering service to the Tattvadarshana, one who has already seen the truth, Krishna's devotee, and by also hearing from him, our consciousness becomes purified. And when the Lord sees, this is the process that he gave, and when the Lord sees that the consciousness of the living entity has become purified, then he within the heart, he says in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I give them the knowledge by which they can come to me. I help them to come to the spiritual platform. So this is the second part of this verse, and that is the material energy, very duratya, very difficult to overcome. Nobody can overcome it. And then he says, but you can easily, taranti te. Taranti, in Hindi it's tarant. Tarant means just like that, tarant, immediately. Taranti te. And here it's translated as overcome. Right? So you can easily overcome. And in a moment you can do that. But what is the key to that? What is the key word here that brings something in this verse from duratya, very difficult, impossible, you can't do it, to taranti te. Easily. Overcome. You can do it. Easily. What is it?
Surrender.
Prapadyante. Right, surrender. So this is the only thing that is holding us back from coming to the perfect platform is this small little word, surrender. Why don't we surrender? We don't surrender because we have this idea that we're going to become happy in this material world. And therefore, due to that lack of surrender, we wind up experiencing birth after birth in this material world and therefore suffering. The material world sees suffering. Just like, the devotees that first joined the movement, they were all, 19, 20, 22 years old, right? And now we're much older now, right? And I can see everybody sporting the beards and we're older. Let's face it. And Prabhupada said, what is old age? Old age means suffering, right? So as you get older, you suffer more and more. There's so much, it's described in the Vedic literatures that this body is like a bag of 1,000 joints. Just think how many joints there are. Between every bone in the body, there's a joint, right? And there's like 1,000 joints in the body. I don't know what the allopathic doctors say, but that's what the Vedas say. And in old age, all of those joints hurt. They're painful, right? So that's why there's a billion-dollar business of, pain ointments and different kinds of things that we get. So the body is as it gets closer to death, Krishna gives these little hints. Actually, they're not hints; they're loud screams. Get your act together now, okay? This is the grand finale here, and it's time to surrender. So Srila Prabhupada has, by his good example, shown us what it means to surrender, and that is that every moment should be used to think of Krishna and to serve Krishna. Srila Prabhupada did that by his example. Not only that, but he engaged others in thinking of Krishna and serving Krishna. And Now, I'm just reading the book that Shama Sundar wrote. It's volume 2 of Chasing the Rhinos, right? It's amazing how Srila Prabhupada could empower the devotees to do so many amazing things. Just see the things that Shama Sundar was involved in. The first Rath Yatra in San Francisco, then going with the other householder couples to London, and he had an idea that they'll, make one of the Beatles a devotee, and they preached to George Harrison, and George Harrison got inspired, wrote a song, what was it, My Sweet Lord, and they had the Hare Krishna mantra in it. I'm sure we all heard that, right, when we were young. People are still listening to that song. And then he went to India, and they did the first Pandal program in Bombay, where 10,000 people were coming every night listening to Srila Prabhupada speak, and he had this idea of advertising it by, which was never even seen before in India. They had this big balloon, this helium balloon, and it said Hare Krishna on it. So later on he goes to Russia, so many different things he was inspired by Srila Prabhupada to do in the service of Lord Chaitanya's movement. And so it seems like, well, nowadays, how can we do these big-time preaching activities? But that's not required. Srila Prabhupada was also very much appreciative of the things that devotees do in a very steady way. Right? He was very appreciative of steadiness. And if a devotee did something that on his instruction and was very steady about it, actually in any organization, that steadiness is required. Of course, the charismatic persons that do a lot and stand out in the front, these are important persons. We need such charismatic persons. But the real foundation of an organization is the people that are kind of in the background, and they're doing their service conscientiously, and they do it in a very regulated and a very steady way. These are the real foundation of an organization. So there's a great opportunity here in all of our centers for our devotees to come forward and do some steady service for the pleasure of Krishna, and in this way attract the mercy of Krishna, so that we can become free from this very stringent laws of material nature, the mode of passion, the mode of goodness, the mode of ignorance. Right? It's so easy for these modes to overcome us. But for one who tries to be steady, taking the instructions of Srila Prabhupada to heart, to chant Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
I had a little joke that, in Bombay they used to announce that on Ekadasi we're going to chant 25 rounds. Right? Everybody should chant 25 rounds on Ekadasi. But I was thinking, well, some devotees aren't even chanting the 6th round. Maybe they should announce, okay, today we're going to chant 16 rounds. So the first thing is to just chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on the instructions of his pure devotee. And other things will automatically follow about how to be steady, how to be, how to think of Krishna, and the best way to serve Krishna. And if we do that just in a steady way, then the purport of this verse, which is to overcome the stringent laws of material nature, and so that we don't have to again experience this material body that's growing old and filled with disease. And I just heard the other day that our godbrother Pushti Krishna Prabhu was Srila Prabhupada's personal servant for a long time. Now he has brain cancer. And so these things are awaiting us. It will happen to us. I remember when, in the end, in Srila Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, He was very sick. He couldn't stand up. He couldn't sit up in the bed. But yet he had the devotees prop him up. I remember one devotee was holding his back, one devotee was holding his shoulders, and he gave a lecture. And he talked about the miseries of the material body. And he also said, don't think this won't happen to you. Right? So it was a reminder for us that yes, that time is coming, but we should become prepared for it. And this verse talks about that preparation, and that is to surrender to Krishna. And that surrender will save us from the rebirth in this material world and take us all the way back to the spiritual world. So this is a very important verse, and by meditating on this verse, we can understand about how actually to surrender. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes?
I have a quick question. So I've heard that Prabhupada, when he was leaving his body, he was fasting till he passed. And
Well, he was doing everything. It was amazing. I was there at the time. It was such a mystical thing when he was leaving his body. He was fasting. He wasn't eating anything. Absolutely nothing. It was just skin and bones. And the doctor said it must be tremendous pain because there's no muscle there, just the skin and bone. And Srila Prabhupada was in that condition. But then one of his disciples came from Canada. His name was Vishnu Tattva. And he was this kind of bodybuilder kind of guy. He was a good cook. So he cooked for Srila Prabhupada, he and his wife. And Srila Prabhupada ate a lot. And then the devotees went completely ecstatic because they thought, Srila Prabhupada's getting better, he ate. And then the next moment again, he wasn't eating anything. So it was kind of this roller coaster ride of Srila Prabhupada. Looked like he was getting better and then looked like he wasn't. I had the opportunity to be sitting in his room, just Prabhupada lying in the bed, and I was sitting there chanting, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj came in and began to speak to Srila Prabhupada. So he said, Srila Prabhupada, we've consulted with the astrologer, and if you just make it past this period, you're going to live for another 20 years. And Srila Prabhupada said, who wants to live like this? and then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, no, but you're going to get better. And then Srila Prabhupada went, Now, if you ever heard Srila Prabhupada's it's so deep and so meaningful, It can really just say everything, but just that sound. So, of course, in the end, Srila Prabhupada left. And there was a whole amazing kind of Leela that Srila Prabhupada was in, and his idea was that he didn't want to just pass away in the bed. He wanted to be in the battlefield. So he told Lokanath Swami to go get a bullock cart, and he was going to go around Govardhan Hill on Govardhan Puja was coming up. And so Lokanath Swami went out and did his, dutifully brought it, but there was a big dispute between different groups of devotees about whether we should take Prabhupada on this parikrama in the back of a bullock cart with just a mattress in it or not. So one group was saying yes, it's what Prabhupada wanted, and the other group was saying no. And so finally, I think it was Bhavananda came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, we're very concerned about this going on Govardhan Puja. We're in a lot of anxiety that, just now it appears you're getting better with the Kaviraj's medicine, and this trip may be too much for you. So we're in a lot of anxiety. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, you're in anxiety? Well, I don't want to put you in anxiety. He said, if you don't want me to go, then I won't go. So he didn't go. But then I can remember that we were in the BBT library party at the time, and some of the group and some of the devotees in our party were that we should go out and do the libraries for Srila Prabhupada, and not just be with him in Vrindavan. But it seemed like Srila Prabhupada wanted as many devotees as possible just to be with him. So there was, again, we were split what to do. So we went to Satsrup Maharaj, who was the library party in charge in America, and asked him, and he said, well, why don't you do the libraries around here in Mathura, and then you can be with Prabhupada on the weekends when the libraries are closed. So that was the compromise. But our van was in Ahmedabad, so we had to go back and get the van. And I can remember that it was just the evening of Govardhan Puja, and I went in to offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, and just as, you see, Prabhupada didn't have any taste on his tongue, so sometimes he would eat something just to see if there was some taste there. And they had given him some, what they call save, what they call chudi noodles, it's besan, fried noodles. His sister had cooked it, Bhima. And
he could chew that up at that time?
Huh?
He could chew that up at that time?
They gave it to him. Bhavananda gave it to him. But he didn't have any taste, so he spit it back out. And I was just getting up from offering my obeisances, and, Bhavananda turned around and said, here, take Prabhupada's remnants. So I got to take those remnants. And this maybe were the last remnants that he had, because he just left a day after or so. But Srila Prabhupada, at that, I remember when I first joined, I was just 6 months in the movement, and I was in Mayapur, and I wanted to see Srila Prabhupada, so I went to his room, and I could see inside in Mayapur, there were sannyasis inside there, and I was going to offer my obeisances and go inside. So as I was offering my obeisances, these two brahmacharis, I think it was Trishtadyumna and Bhavabhuti, they came flying out of the room and they said, quick, grab him, he's trying to go in Prabhupada's room. And then I realized you just couldn't walk into Srila Prabhupada's room again. But in the end, when we had been traveling in Gujarat distributing sets, we came to Vrindavan, and the first thing we met was Bhavananda, and we asked where, if we could go, and he said, yeah, sure, you just go into Prabhupada's room. So at that time it was very easy to go in and have association with Srila Prabhupada. And devotees would take one small little set of kartals and chant for Srila Prabhupada every day. So I did that, and also I had another service. I would bring his, those days they used to cook with charcoal, the evening prasada. So Bhakti True Swami would have me go and collect some hot coals, and then he would take that and put the incense, so they call it duni in India. Frankincense is what they call it in English. He would burn that frankincense, and that would chase the mosquitoes away, and then he would put down his mosquito net for the night for Prabhupada. So that was the other service that I had. Srila Prabhupada. But anyway, this remembrance of Srila Prabhupada and trying to surrender unto his instructions is definitely the ways and means to get back home, back to Godhead. Any other? Yes?
Well, you mentioned about on Ekadasi trying to increase the standard of chanting. That's one thing you'll do.
Yeah.
How do you enforce Srila Prabhupada's rules and regulations or Srila Prabhupada's standards without using force?
Well, you can't really use force to, you can't enforce anything upon anyone. It has to be out of love. And, the expert preacher is one who can inspire devotees to surrender out of love. Right? And Srila Prabhupada had so much love to give, he, solicited that kind of reciprocation from the devotees. They just wanted to, do things for him. And so you can't enforce anything in terms of devotional service. It has to be voluntary, and it has to be so that the expert manager is one who one sets a good example, and two inspires the devotees to out of their own volition to come forward and to follow the principles and to chant and to render service to Krishna. Yes?
I would like to know a little bit more about something interesting, that an organization needs all kinds of people. There are the go-getters, the frontliners, the charismatic people, the people who drive and wanting to do and shake things up, and then you have this quiet, steady, rock steady, do the daily, every day, whatever needs to be done and so on. So I was just wondering, how can that charismatic, go-getter, motor passion kind of person acquire some of those qualities of steadiness and moderation and being, temperate and all that? And then how can the steady people, when required, acquire a little bit of the, enthusiasm and the go-getting attitude of the other kind of personality?
Well, everyone renders service to Krishna according to the inspiration that they get from Krishna. Krishna clearly says that he's, situated in everyone's heart, and from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So what we need specifically to make advancement in devotional service, whether it is a little bit more get up and go, or a little bit more laid back, Krishna knows best, and he inspires the devotees from within the heart, what they should do at particular times in their devotional service to achieve that attachment for Krishna. The ultimate goal is to become attached to Krishna, and attached to Krishna's holy name.
Thanks.
Yes.
The verse in purport was saying that surrender to Krishna was how we could cross beyond this material energy. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, or Krishna's bona fide representative. So, where does that leave us today? I mean, we have our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and we're preaching this message. So, we're advertising for people to surrender to Krishna and to Krishna's bona fide representative, meaning Srila Prabhupada his disciplic succession. So, can you make anything out of what I'm saying there and elaborate?
Well, I just know one thing, and that is, once in the Denver airport, one of the reporters asked Srila Prabhupada, what will happen to this movement after you die? And Srila Prabhupada said, I will never die. I'll live forever. And the devotees were like, wow, how do you go? They're all ecstatic. So Srila said, because I'll live forever in my books. So Srila Prabhupada's available through his instructions in his books, and he's also available through all of his followers who read his books and try to follow those instructions. He's also available through them. And that's how this movement has continued, for the last 40 years since Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. And it's the way that it will continue in the future. Based upon the instructions in Srila Prabhupada's books, and those devotees who try to follow him. That's how the movement will go on. Is that all right?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. So the ordinary person who somehow ever hears this message and wants to surrender, then he can just take the message from the devotees and from the books. And I mean, it's pretty organized. I mean, from the time Prabhupada came, he had things organized, and it's as organized as ever. So we just follow the program, so to speak. We've always called it the program.
The program. Yeah, it's like when the devotees came, you know, Shyamsundar talks about it in his book, Chasing Rhinos. They came to Bombay and they were doing some preaching, but they didn't have any books. And then, you know, a consignment arrived in India from Dai Nippon in Japan. And then the preaching, expanded even more when the books came. So it's always the movement going on and people's advancement. It always revolves around Srila Prabhupada's books.
I'm glad you brought that up again about the Chasing Rhinos, because we do have part 2 in the back of the temple room, sitting right next to part 1 by Shyamsundar. If anybody would like to buy that book, we can give you a $5 discount today.
Yeah, I was just talking to Kirtiraj on the phone, and we were remembering because back when Russia was still a communist country, Shyamsundar went there, by the way, with Prabhupada as his secretary. But, the place is so transformed, and now there's so many devotees and so many centers all over Russia. But at one time it was very difficult to preach there. Ananta Shanti went to jail and other devotees too. But he had given me a gold Rolex watch. He said, you sell this and print Russian Bhagavad Gita. So we did. He reminded me, I even forgot, but we printed this pocket-sized Russian Bhagavad Gita, 50,000 copies. And then we got it into Russia by giving it to airline hostess from Bombay, Air India. And when they went to Russia, they gave them out to people. Or when the ballet, the Russian ballet came to Bombay, we went there and met the Russian people that were in that troupe and gave them Bhagavad Gita. Somehow or another we were getting the Bhagavad Gitas into Russia, and just see today how it's transformed.
And it was pocket size.
It was pocket size, Russian Gita, small, on Bible paper. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanandi.
Thank you very much.
Shedding all day. But it smells nice, doesn't it? You're from a good country. I'm hugging from that.
Yeah, I tend to think it is, but we've had it for so long. You know who's put it on about the Shamalat, and maybe she knows it for free. I'll ask. I've never used it myself. We have a real that one's plastic, but we have a real one.
Oh, we got a real one too.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.